In this section, we'll work on the back base and its walls, and for that we need, under the main base top, we need the back base and top, these two pieces here, and then the back walls are walls A through G, and I have them laid out here. Some of these are cut at 16ths, like 1 7/16, so make sure you pay attention to those marks and get those cut accurately. And then we'll need decorative paper for walls A, everything but wall G basically, and templates. This template that we cut the front base and top from also has the back base and top, and this page that had the window openings that included side J now has the two for sides C and D. So we need those two templates. So let's get started. So let's get started cutting our back base and top, and similarly to the front base, on one of the pieces, the top piece, we'll cut this hole for access to the lights. If you're not having lights, you don't have to cut this hole. And you can cut this out and use it as a template, but I will also show you how you can just take some measurements and transfer it directly to your chipboard. So this line here is center on the piece. So if this is a 2 5/8 inch wide piece, then half of 2 5/8 is 1 5/16. So you can draw a line at 1 5/16 and get started that way. So let me do that. There's a 1 5/16 line, and then if you measure along, this F is 2 1/4, so I'll measure and mark a line that's 2 1/4 there. So I've just marked that point at 2 1/4, and on this end it's a 1/2 inch. Line B is a 1/2 inch, so I'll mark for B here. And then there's a dotted line here that helps you measure to get to this corner for DC, which is 1 1/4 inch. So I'll mark that 1 1/4 inch. And then D is 1 3/4 inch, so we'll measure up 1 3/4 inch from that mark we just made. And now we can just connect the dots here and here to make these two lines and make those cuts. So I'll make those cuts, and I'll repeat that on the other side and come back to show you how to deal with the hole. I have both of my pieces cut now, and I've laid them on top of my template here, and I'm just checking to see if I have anything that's off a little bit. The one that is the closest to being online, and hopefully you'll have one that is exactly online, put that aside, and that's going to be the base. And then we'll take the top and we'll make the hole in it. So to make that hole, we've drawn this line already that's coming down here. Now we just want to draw another line that's a 1/2 inch away from that on the front. So I'll just turn this around, and I'll put my ruler up along that line there and draw a 1/2 inch. So now I have both this line drawn and this line drawn. Now I just want to come perpendicular from the 2 points there, and I'll just use my craft mat to help me with that. And I can come here and line up my ruler with this point and just look through it and make sure I've got something that is helping me keep my ruler straight. And again, I'll come over to this point and help keep my ruler straight there. And now I've got marked out a hole here that matches this one, and I'll cut that out for my top. So now here's my piece with the hole cut in it, and I can just set that aside because we won't need that for a little while. And then our last prep step on the base only, not on the piece with the hole in it, is to add little joining strips all the way around the perimeter so that we'll be ready to attach our walls. Now we can cut the window openings, if we're having lights, on pieces C and D. And on the template here, if you look over here on J, it tells the dimensions. They're the same vertical dimensions that we had when we used side J for the windows over here on side C and D. 1 9/16 and 3 3/16 for the bottom, and 5 1/4 and 6 7/8 for the openings for the top windows. So I'll go ahead and draw those 4 lines across. So now that we have our 4 horizontal lines drawn, we need to draw the vertical lines. And on both of these, the windows get centered in each piece. So we need to draw a line down the center of each piece. So just take a centering ruler and line it up and mark center at the top and bottom on each piece and connect those lines. So now I have a centered line on each piece, and let's just look at C to begin with, because the windows have different widths on C and D. So on C, the windows are 3/4 of an inch wide. So from center, we want to draw a line 3/8 to the right and 3/8 of an inch to the left, and that will give us a 3/4 inch wide window. So we'll draw a line 3/8 on either side of center on C. And then on piece D, the windows are 1 inch wide. So we'll just draw a line half an inch on either side of center to give us a 1 inch wide window there. So I'll do that on each piece, and then I'll cut out those 4 openings. So here are my window openings cut in walls C and D. Now we're ready to prep decorative paper, and for wall A, I'm going to use the same paper that I used for wall J because they're on the same side of the house. And just like for wall J, we need to cut this piece a half an inch wider than wall A. And since wall A is 1 7/16, we can cut this to 1 15/16, so 1/16 of an inch less than 2, and we'll allow it to go the full length of the paper. And also I'm going to cut that at 1 15/16, and then I'm going to score in a half an inch on the right side. Now for walls B and F, I want to use this paper, but the side with the stripes I want to use for the side piece later, and so I want to cut out what I need for that side piece before I cut out what I need for B and F. And what I've decided to do for that side piece is the side piece we need to cut 3 3/4 inches wide, and I basically want the 3 inches going from this side of the orange stripe to this side of the orange stripe. So I'm going to move my ruler 3/8 of an inch to the left of this orange stripe here, and that's where I'll make my first cut. And then I'm going to cut this 3 3/4 inches wide, which comes down somewhere near the end of this black, and I'm going to reserve that for my side piece. So first I'll make those cuts, and then we'll come back and cut what we need for B and F. So now that I've cut that piece I need for the side piece, I'm left with these two pieces, and I'm going to cut those the exact same size that the chipboard pieces were cut. So both 7 3/4 high, and B is 7/16 inch wide, and F is 2 3/16 wide. So I'll cut those and put some little labels on them, and then set those two pieces aside. Now walls C, D, and E, which go in this order on the house, I'm going to use this paper on, and we're going to cut each piece the exact same size as these walls. Now I think what I'm going to do is center wall D on this center, and then do cut walls C and D, just because there is kind of a pattern to this. So I think I'll take advantage, because I don't need these other two pieces of paper right now. So I'll cut these to the exact sizes, and then for D and C I'll temporarily attach it to the front of each one. And let me just write front so I don't get confused. I'll temporarily attach it to the front and cut out the window openings like we've done before. So here are all my pieces of decorative paper, and I've inked the edges of each one, and then I have also prepped with score tape. Here for piece A, I've put a 3/8 of an inch piece along this tab. B is just completely covered. C and D just on the edges and around the windows. And then for E and F, they both have an extra piece that is of score tape, a 1/2 inch score tape, that the top is at 4.5 inches, and that's because there's a porch that comes in here and gets attached, and we want to have good adhesion between the paper and the chipboard. And then on F there's also some doors that are going in here, so I just put an extra piece of score tape along the center there. So that's all of our pieces of decorative paper, and we can just set them aside for now. So now we're ready to join the walls together on this back section, and we lay them out with A on the right going up to G on the left. And these are all going to be butt joints, but two of them are on the outside, and that's B going to C and E going to F. So if this is where I've written the piece names is the outside, I'll take my joining strips on the outside of those two joins. So I'll do those two first, and then I'll be back. So now I've made these two joins, and all the rest are going to be on the inside. So we want to take these and flip them so that we keep them in the same order. And now these other joins, we'll just join them again with butt joints. Now use your mat to your advantage here so that you can keep everything straight and in alignment, so that you'll have a nice perpendicular unit when you're finished. So now here we have all of our pieces put together, and we can see the shape it's going to take here. And I made sure to burnish everything down well. And so then on the insides, a 1/16 of an inch down from the top, we want to add some ledger strips again, holding them back about a 1/16 of an inch from each of the seams. And then here on piece A, we want to hold it back at least an 1/8 of an inch from this edge, because just like piece J, it's going to fit around the interior box. So I'm going to add ledger strips all along the top here. And you can use a piece of a chipboard again if you can't judge by eye that 1/16 of an inch. So I'll go ahead and get that accomplished. So I finished adding all of my ledger strips to the top of this unit, and then around the windows here I've prepped for adding the tracing paper. And there's one other thing I want to do, and that is to add a joining strip on the inside of wall G here. I'll give that a good burnish, of course. Okay. So now a piece of tracing paper that we prepped just like we did for the front of the house, with crunkling it up and then adding distress ink. Again, I used vintage photo and black soot. I cut this 3 1/4, I think, and so that it can span both of these window frames. So I'll go ahead and remove my score tape backing and put that piece in place. So now we have our tracing paper attached, and we can go ahead and attach the wall assembly to the back base. And I'm not going to attach wall A or wall G at this point, just these walls along here. So not A and not G. So I'll go ahead and what I like to do is just start with wall D, that is the outer bay window, and kind of fit that in around and get that in. Just kind of lightly tack it, and then you can pick it up from the bottom and make sure that everything is fitting nicely, and then go ahead and put that on down well. And then remove the score tape backing from the other joining strips on this kind of outside edge. And then bring everything around. Now remember, this wall A, we're not attaching it now, but right here at this end, it overhangs by an 1/8 of an inch. And the walls fit on the outside of the base. And on the G side, it should meet exactly with that corner. But again, we're not attaching G quite yet. Give everything a good burnish. And the reason why we're just not attaching those yet is just to have easier access to put the lights in these windows here. So again, I've got one of these string of lights, and I'm just going to turn on the lights and arrange the lights behind these windows here, and I've cut some of my little tabs here if I want to anchor it in place. So I'll just go ahead and get those lights arranged. So I have all of my little lights attached, and I made sure to burnish these little tabs down well. If they're not sticking, just add a little bit of glue or glossy accents behind them so that they stay in place. And then once the lights are in, we can go ahead and finish attaching A and G here. Remember, G is even and A overhangs down here by 1/8 of an inch. Now before we attach the back side to the interior box, we need to draw a line to help us guide piece G, and we're going to draw that at 6 1/16 from the front edge. So here's, or the open edge I should say, so here's my open edge, and I'm just going to measure and draw a line, a vertical line, at 6 1/16. So to join the back unit to the interior box, we have a joining strip at the bottom, a joining strip back here at G, and we're going to glue on this edge of A to the edge of the box here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the backing from these two pieces of joining strip, but I'm kind of making sure that they're not going to engage prematurely, so I'm just kind of folding them back using my thumbnail to make sure they're kind of staying back. And then I'll put glue, actually I'll put the glue here on the edge of A and go ahead and get that attached onto the open end of the box here. And once that's set up for a few minutes, I'll engage the bottom joining strip, and then I'll use this line that we drew here on the outside of piece G to make sure it stays straight and plumb. So here's my glue on piece A, and I've just used my fingers to kind of run up and down this edge here and make sure that that edge is staying flush with the box there, and I'm going to let that set up and dry for a few minutes. So once piece A has set up, I'm just holding the corner of G down here by matching it up with the line, and then I'll match up the top of G up here and reach in and burnish down that joining strip. And then finally I'll reach in and I'll make sure that the base is tight against the interior box and attach that joining strip that's down there at the bottom. And finally I'll turn on my lights and just check to make sure nothing got disturbed when I was doing all of that work inside of the box. Now we're ready to put this top piece in place, and it just sits inside and rests on all of those ledger strips. And we glue it in, and before we glue it in, we feed the light switch through that hole. Now I also have a spare scrap of chipboard here that's square, because I want to make sure when I get that put in and glued that I use something to help keep this top square, because eventually our square tower is going to fit into this spot, and we want to make sure when we're using glue that we're keeping things as square as possible. So I've run glue along all those ledger strips, and I'll just fit this piece in place. Now just kind of use your fingers to apply pressure inside of the box and onto all of these corners, and when it's set for a second, just take your little square and make sure everything is nice and square. And if you put your structure on your gridded mat and you line up an edge like you can see I have here on a grid line, then the opening should be 2 inches. This opening here is 2 inches, and you should see that on either side your building is staying parallel to the grid lines. And just let it set up and dry for a little while. So my glue is set up now and I can move on. I've put a piece of tape across the top here just so that this little light doesn't fall down inside of that hole. And now on any of the joins here that aren't finished, so here between F and G, between D and E, all of these that we can see a crack kind of between the chipboard, all the outside joints, I want to put some finishing strips on those. So I've cut these 7 3/4 and I'm just going to fit them around so that the corners stay nicely covered. So I'll go ahead and do that for those 4 corners. And now that our finishing strips are on, we can go ahead and put our decorative paper on all of these walls. And remember, wall A has the score so that it can go to the inside here of the box, and it fits flush down here at the bottom so that it has about 1/4 of an inch overhang up here at the top. And we should see about a 1/16 of an inch reveal of black here on this left edge. So I'll put piece A on, and then all of the other pieces just get centered in their sections, and they fit exactly top to bottom. The window sections, of course, you'll make sure that the openings get aligned when you put those on. And if you see any white edges showing, make sure you put some black ink on those edges before you attach them down. So I'll go ahead and work my way around here and put all the decorative paper on the back side. So here is all of the decorative paper attached. And we have one more thing we need to do, and that is to draw a pencil line on wall F, which is this one, and wall E, which is this slanted one right here. And we draw that pencil line up 4.5 inches from the bottom. So find the bottom and then just draw a pencil line. Sorry, my hand's kind of in the way. And 4.5 inch from the bottom on each side, and that will help us align the porch tops later. So there's our back section to this point.